Right, we are back with another In That Number podcast. Special guest this week, and we've just celebrated 30 years of Super League. Mr. Alan Hunt, how you doing, mate?
I'm not bad at all. Technical issues, but glad to get on with this.
Right, we got there in the end.
Yeah.
Um, so I just want to take it back to the beginning. What's your first memories of rugby league, and if there's any players who stood out to you as a young lad?
My first memories are probably watching my dad play. Um, he played for a team based on Eastmore where we lived. He'd been a professional, but I don't really have any memories of him at Wakefield. Got a few pictures of me as a toddler on the pitch, etc. But he was playing for Primrose Hill, working men's clubby, whatever
Yeah,
team that came out of that. Big local rivals with Eastmore, which is the estate, as I said, where we lived. And then he went back to the professional game at Dewsbury, so around professional grounds at the old Crown Flats, and in the stand watching my dad play. And yeah, just growing up on a rugby estate, it was part of normal life for everybody. So from those early memories, joined when I was about 9 or 10 at Eastmore.
yeah. So was Eastmore where you started playing as a young lad as well?
Yeah, yeah. I think I might have gone when I was about 8, and we trained. And I came home with a bus nose, and my dad went told it to me mum, told you he was too young. Um, and so it got delayed a year. But then I was coming back saying, "Oh, my mates are playing, and I want to go." And my dad was still at Dewsbury, so he would come in from work and grab a bag and go straight to Dewsbury. Um, so it was my two sisters. My mum's got them. So if you did anything, you had to make sure that you could get there yourself. And I know
Yeah.
times were different back then. And I lived on the estate. It was only about 3 or 4 minute walk. It wasn't far. So probably, like I said, maybe just before my 10th, but round about the age of 10, I was allowed to be able to go to the club, start training. Fred Lindop took the first session. He was a huge part of that amateur club, and coached the various kids. He wasn't a specific coach for an age group, and I dropped on one of his sessions as my first one, running up and down slag heaps from the pit that was on the estate that was in the process of shutting down actually. And yeah, just with my mates, loved it. We would, we'd have been playing out together. We'd have been playing footy or in the summer cricket or hide and seek, whatever it was. So it was more planned
Yeah.
activities out of school, but yeah, and that was it. It wasn't just about going and watching. It was now being able to participate myself, and I suppose I probably already had the bug anyway because that's what made me want to go. But once I was there, never really lost it.
Yeah. There's no going back.
No, no.
Yeah. So well, you said you started at 8. Did you progress through the age groups and then started to get noticed by Wakefield?
Um, well, it was different then, and I've no idea what it was like in the northwest, but back then, you jumped 2 age groups. So you went from under 11s, so you could be under 10s and play. Then in your second year, you were at the top end. Then from 11s, you went to 13s, and 13s, you went to 15s, 15s to 17s, and 17s to 19s. There was no even number age
Yeah.
groups. And I'm sure I had a couple of years at under 11s. I think I've probably got a trophy somewhere that said under 10s because that wasn't my age group, but I was playing
Yeah.
under 11. Um, and yeah, I missed the year, which would have been first year under 17s because I was going to so many cricket nets. Because I
Oh
was an
yeah.
avid, I loved playing sport. Went to the athletics club, and like I say, you had to make sure you could get there. There was no lifts from mum and dad, everything was relatively local. But I was going to so many nets, and that's why we couldn't rely on mum and dad, because my sisters were in majorettes or whatever, and that was a bit of a travel. When I was going to cricket nets, I played for Yorkshire, schoolboys under 15s, and I was going to Headingley doing nets through the winter and whatever. And it looked like cricket might be a professional possibility. So I missed that first year of 17s, and it nearly killed me because I really missed playing rugby. But it's always serious, if you're undertaking something, you turn up, you work hard, enjoy it. And so I wasn't able to really hit all the sessions. So I forsaked 1 year of amateur rugby, but missed it that much that I went to a different club because all my mates were saying, "Oh, we're doing okay. You'll come back and want to play and glory hunt and what have you." And I went, "No, that's not me." And by this stage, I was leaving school. It was that year. So I was in the last year at school, and I caught a bus and went down to play for Ulton, which is actually in Leeds, but it's only about 4 miles away from where I live. So, and they were not the team. They were rubbish. They were getting 7 or 8 people turning up for training and getting called off because we couldn't raise a team. And I thought, I can't do it. I'm in or I'm out. There's no messing about. So I played, I think, 1 game for them, and went, right, no, I'm not doing that. Concentrate on the cricket, and then back to Eastmore next year. So, but yeah, I just progressed. I had a couple of years at a different club, top end 13s and top end 15s. I went to play for team Half Acre in Castleford, and I could get a lift. I went with Gary Price, who played at Wakefield Trinity. Gary.
Oh yeah.
We were the same age group. We played for Wakey Schools. Under 13s, played for Yorkshire Schools at under 13s, and he wasn't happy at his club, and I think Eastmore was struggling to raise a team, and whatever the reason, I ended up going there for those 2 years, and we had a great team. They were a good team. Tony Smith, that played at Cass, played for them. We were 13, so we didn't know it was going to be Gary Price that played at Wakey and me and Tony Smith. But and my mum's from Cass, so I knew Castleford. And my grandma still lived there, so I had a couple of years there. But the predominance of my amateur rugby was at Eastmore, and that's where I lived there on the estate. I played for them. That's where I signed for, or from, and they were my amateur team.
Yeah. So got to 22nd of January 89, if I've done my own work right. You signed for Wakefield Trinity.
Yes, I think you are. I think you actually, that's good start.
God bless Rugby League project. That's what I'm going to say.
It was Challenge Cup deadline, which might come up if we're talking about Saints. Challenge Cup deadline, and I'd played for Barla the year before, and in the lead up to getting selected for that, clubs started to get interested, and because I'm a young school age, as in July baby, so I'm in that last quartile. So pretty much I left school and finished that school year, and everybody would have finished, like when you're leaving school, everybody leaves at 16, barring the July and August babies, and I was 15, just about to turn 16, and I played. So my first year of under 19s, I played the whole season as a 17-year-old. Got selected for Barla, and by the time I played for Great Britain, I'd already talked to a couple of clubs had inquired and spoke to my dad. Hunslet were one, Wakefield were interested, I think Halifax. But we didn't do much about it because the process was different back then. And once I got on that pathway with Barla, I knew there was a tour the next year, and I was still in the 19s, and I wanted to go to Australia, so we put it off.
That was like the progression to the international squad, wasn't it, Barla?
Yeah, well, I played Yorkshire, Well, I played for the town team, and we won all, St Helens town team, Wigan, Castleford, Wakefield. They all play knockout, get to the end, and we beat Castleford in the final, and we were a really good team. And there was only two amateur teams in Wakefield under 19s, Eastmoor and Normanton. But Normanton got to the National Cup semi-finals, final, won the Yorkshire. They were really good. We weren't bad, Eastmoor. But together, we had a great town team. So that progression got me selected for Yorkshire. And I think that's when Wakefield started coming in and Hunslet, etc. So you start to get noticed. But it all happens relatively quick. Within about 3 months, you play for the county, and then from the county games against Cumbria in Lancashire, they selected a Great Britain team, and I got selected for that. And being still 17, playing under 19s, I knew I was able to go on this tour, and there was already talking about the tour because some of the guys that were in that Barla team, like myself, Paul Derbyshire, Gary Chambers, ours was like, we'll be able to go to Australia next year. I knew I could turn pro, but all the aspirations, you have to be as good as you want to be and play for your country at professional levels. It's great to have that, and I most certainly did. But you don't know. You might never get a chance to go to Australia again on tour and what have you. So it was a big incentive that is probably lacking in the game now in that respect. So once I played for Great Britain, obviously more clubs became interested. So I knew I was going to turn professional. And because of that, barring injury, which if you're professional or amateur, that can affect your path slightly or greatly. It can stop your path. You've got to weigh it up, and you've got to take your chances on whether it's worth the risk of not turning pro earlier. And you think you're invincible when you're a kid. You know what I mean? So as a 17/18-year-old kid, I'm like, I won't get injured. I'll be all right. I mean, I could have got injured and not gone on tour. So, you play your cards, and I hung fire. And it was a great decision because the following year, I captained that Barla team in the 2 test matches against France, went on tour as vice captain. I'd signed by the 22nd, like I said. And when you say the 22nd at Wakefield, I didn't actually sign a contract. I was just a registered player. I needed to keep my amateur status to play for Barla. I registered as an amateur, and it was on Challenge Cup deadline. I'd started talking to more and more clubs by that stage, especially in person. Don't know the chronological order, but I went to obviously Wigan and St Helens, Leeds. Others had contacted, and we were lining up, meeting them, etc. But Wakefield offered this, which meant I could still talk to other clubs. It meant that I kept my amateur status, but it meant that I got to train at Wakefield. I got that professional environment. And I'm a Wakey lad, and I'm a Wakey supporter. At the beginning of that season, I was on the terraces with my mates. We'd play a Sunday morning, have a pint in the clubhouse afterwards, walk down to the ground, have a pint in a pub just down the road from Wakey's ground, stand on the terraces and cheer Wakey on. So to be in that at Trinity was great. And they invited me to go to the Salford game, the first team. They were away. And this must have been the 21st because it was the day before. So I turned up and I went on the wives and A team. They run 2 buses. The first team went on one, and any 18 players and wives that were going to the game went on the second. I went on that, and then after the game, they went, come back on the first team bus. And
you were still something right then.
it was a bit of a sneak. They wanted to get me by myself without my dad, former
Oh
Wakey
yeah.
player. It was, wanted to drive a hard bargain, etc. And we've been putting him off in talks leading up to that. And as soon as we got on the bus, he went, Alan, come down to the front. And I'm sat there with the club secretary and one of the board members and Dave Topless, the coach. And they were like selling the club. And, all sounded great. But I said, I'm going to have to go home and speak to my dad. So I did, and he wasn't happy. He's like, they've done this to try and get you to, sign without me. I had a conversation on the phone, and he came up and said, well, look, if he keeps his amateur status, if he's not signing, he'll register. So I went down next day, registered, then went to France to play the first of the 2 test matches against them with Bala. So I couldn't play that week. Then the following week, I played in the A-team on the Friday night. So that was my first ever professional run out. Like I say, I was still amateur, but with a professional team. And then after the game, Topo went, come and train with the first team. And I thought, they're trying it again. So I went and did the captain's run with the first team. And at the end of the session, he said, you're on the bench. So I got to play. So everybody thinks I signed from Wakefield as a professional. I was still amateur. I wasn't a contracted player. I turned up the next day and I ended up starting because someone had pulled out. So I moved from the bench to the start and started in the centres for Wakey. Played the following week in the Challenge Cup, which cup tied me for Saints.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I went to Wembley that year. And then the following week, Topo said, I can't pick you this week because every time I pick you, someone else comes in for you. Like I made my debut against Castleford. And then on the Tuesday, I was having talks with Castleford because they sussed that I was a free agent, so to speak, available to talk to. And it's probably the worst thing Topo could have done because the longer I spent at Wakefield, the more likely I was probably to sign for them, where my heart was ruling my head. And I took advice from my dad, but every decision I ever made was my own. He didn't want me to sign at Saints. He wanted me to go back to Wigan and had talks with Wigan, and tells the story still to this day. I'd have gone this, but when I came to talk to Saints, it just felt right. It just, and other than the conversation on the phone to arrange going over, we'd not talked money. Went in, spoke with Joe Pickervans, who was chairman, and Alex, and Alex just sold the club to me, of where he saw me fitting in at St Helens, and they weren't the St Helens that they are now, or of more recent years, but they'd gone through, I suppose, within their history, a bit of a lean period. But as a rugby person, I thought of Saints as a big club, and Murph wanted, to get them back up, challenging with Widnes as it was then in Wigan. And he saw me being a big part of that, sold it to me. And I just turned to my dad and said, I want to sign here. And he said, come have a minute. So they left and we had a conversation, and he went, well, he put his argument forward to not signing. But I stood by it and was like, no, my mind's made up, and I became a Saint.
Well, I think I speak on behalf of everyone who supports Saints. You made the right choice instead of going to the dark side of Bill and Jill.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in, like I said, I took advice and I valued his opinion, and it was fantastic for me because he knew a lot of people. He'd been in the game, and he's very strong-minded, which probably went against him because he raised a son that was very like him, and he wasn't upset, but I think he wanted me to listen to him. But it wasn't his decision, he could only advise me, and I think I learned from an early stage that you've got to live and or die, but stand by your decisions that you make. And who knows what sliding doors, who knows what would have happened, if you go somewhere else, do whatever. I could have gone to Wigan and won a lot more. I could have gone to Wigan and not got in their first team. And, I know guys that have been at that club that might have been better than some of the players that were playing regularly. But once you've got the shirt, you've earned the right for a little bit of leeway, so to speak, that, you earn your respect. And depending on coaches and preferences, you just don't know, because, it's not just about, and it's very hard to measure who the best is.
Yeah.
We all have opinions, and when we're talking the likes of Alex Murphy and Ellery Hanley, etc., there'll still be a great discussion. It might depend on generations that prefer Murph to Ellery, etc. But there aren't too many other players coming to those conversations, Billy Boston maybe and the like. But when you're talking about an 18-year-old kid, then there's a lot more to juggle. There's a lot more to take into, and you've got to be a bit. Nobody's got a crystal ball, but there's an element of guesswork that goes into it. And that's not why I didn't want to go to Wigan. I genuinely went to St Helens because Murph just sold it to me, because I was confident, and I think that showed in the way I played. I was confident in my own ability, but I also wanted to just play straight away, because I played straight away at Wakefield and they'd given me a taster, and I felt that it was tough, but I didn't feel out of my depth. So I didn't want to go and then spend 2 years in an 18 waiting for my chance. I didn't expect to sign for St Helens and walk straight into the team either. And so I made the decision. And that, by the time that all happened, I think that was something like, it was the last weekend of February. You'd probably be able to do the maths, because the Wednesday was the first. That's when I made my debut. So 28th, 29th, 28th, 27th. So the 26th would have been the Sunday when I had the talks and signed for St Helens. Even I couldn't have guessed that Murph was going to put me in the first team 3 days later on the Wednesday. And again, circumstance, Fatty Vortin and Michael O'Connor were the overseas players. And Fatty had, from what I can gather, I only played that one game with him. Didn't do any training sessions with either until we got to Wembley and they came back. Obviously, Snoz had not had the greatest stint with Saints for the player that he was. I mean, he was a world-class three-quarter, centre, wing, wherever you put him. Whereas Fatty was more of just a grafting back rower, loose forward with good skill, but he wasn't quite Harry Pinner. But he was both test players, and you probably got more of the what you expect from Fatty Vortin than what we expected from Michael O'Connor, or what they expected. And he pulled out, and some people went, well, they're going home 2 days later. He didn't fancy it, didn't want to play. I don't know, but he didn't. So there was a slot playing on the wing, which I've not done. But it was. I'd played it when I was under 13s, etc. But I'd predominantly come through as a full-back, centre, main positions. Played half-back, but not. I wasn't a standoff. But on the wing, it was a position that I knew. I just hadn't played it for a long time. But if someone offers you that, I'm like, yeah, snapped it up.
It definitely served as well.
Yeah, well, I became a winger. I always said I'm not a winger, but I suppose if you get to do what I did as a winger, you have to class yourself as a winger. And I didn't think of myself as a utility player. I think of those as people that don't necessarily hold down a regular spot,
Yeah.
so to speak, but have that utility value. I was a starting fullback, a starting centre, and a starting winger in all three positions at some period of time at St Helens, but even more so when I went to Warrington as a fullback. I played a whole season as a fullback there. So, and mentioned playing for Barla, that was at fullback, and that's probably the position I'm least known for. So yeah, I turned up. He invited me to the game because basically, because I'd registered with Wakefield, I couldn't sign for Saints and play immediately unless they deregistered me.
Yeah.
So on the Monday morning, that's what Saints did. They got in contact with Wakefield. Wakefield said, "Oh, well, if he's signed, he's signed. There's not much we can do about it. It's not like we've got a contract, but he's our player until the end of the season. That's the registration. We'll release the registration as long as he doesn't play against us this year because we still had to play Wakefield." Saints agreed. So that the paperwork all went through. So I was available to play. So I went training on the Tuesday because Murphy had said, "Come on Tuesday, bring your boots," blah blah blah. They were all out on the front at Knowsley Road, doing their captain's run, etc. And I didn't even train. I just rocked up, brought my boots, got introduced to a few more players, etc. And then Murphy went, "Right, first team game tomorrow. We'd like you to come. Obviously, I want you to be around the first team as much as possible." So he said it's shirt and tie. I turned up. He told me what time. I turned up, shirt and tie, and he went, "You're playing on the wing." Didn't have much time to get nervous.
Yeah.
Very similar to what had happened at Wakefield. So yeah, I had about an hour and a half to prepare. The boots were already there. I brought them the day before. So off we trotted out and made my debut for Saints, and that was the 1st of March. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, everything that Murphy had sold to me, he delivered within that first 3 days, really. I suppose it's easy to say that now because I've got hindsight of knowing what happened and went on from that point. But yeah, it was and it was a nice game to make a debut. It wasn't too tough. It was, it eased me in. And then I think to the end of the season, I think I played 8 or 9 games. I missed one through injury, and I missed another 2 because I was cup tied. So played the rest of the season. Still didn't class myself as a regular first teamer. That became the case, but I couldn't have dreamed of a better start, and I was gutted. I was so made up for the lads because, wonderful group of guys. Again, in hindsight, I know because they're now lifelong mates, but they welcomed you in. They were fab with me. They gutted that they got to Wembley, as in not gutted for them, gutted that they gone to Wembley and I couldn't play. But Murph still took me down as part of the first team squad, which he didn't have to because I was the only. I think he took 22 players, and I was the only one that could not play.
Yeah.
So I got to experience that, walking on Wembley, round the pitch in the suit, all that kind of stuff. Rather forget about the 80 minutes that followed.
Yeah.
As it wasn't
Was
great.
that the one where Wigan just absolutely annihilated us?
Yeah. Just I want to say it wasn't our day, but it wasn't our week. And the funny thing is, the week before, well, 6 days before that, we played them in the Premiership and beat them 4-2 at Wigan.
Yeah.
So, and I played knowing I couldn't play next week, the following week, and me not playing wasn't the reason. It was 27. It was,
Oh, no.
we didn't turn up and Wigan did. Not that they didn't turn up the week before. 4-2 it was a tough encounter. It was a bit really heavy, muddy Central Park,
Yeah.
but showed that we could defend and match it with. They weren't quite the best then, in fact, because they didn't win the league. And that was only their second year of that 8-year run at
Yeah.
Challenge Cups.
I would have been witness that year, wouldn't it? 89.
Yeah, witness for the
Yeah.
second year
Yeah.
on the bounce as well. But they were yards short of the finishing line of becoming the best
Yeah.
team that dominated, which they did. And they were red hot at Wembley.
Yeah.
Ellery was Ellery, and yeah, it wasn't to be, but it gave me that taste of this is how
I
big the
want
club
it.
can be.
Yeah.
These are the spoils. Getting to Wembley, it lit a fire in me to try and get there. I was desperate to play at Wembley from that point on, and there still wasn't a better stadium than the old Wembley.
Yeah. I remember going to the old Wembley a couple of times.
Yeah, just the size of it, the grandeur of it,
Yeah.
And I've been to the new Wembley, and it's a wonderful new stadium, but it just doesn't have that
The same atmosphere.
and size, because
Yeah.
I know football fans, West Ham fans, all complain about the Olympic Stadium being a rubbish football stadium because you're too far away from the pitch. But I bet not one West Ham fan ever complained about playing at Wembley, the old Wembley, when they did.
Yeah.
And
We
they're
had
just as
that
far
big
away.
stretch of sand at the entrance.
Yeah, you're just as far away, and walking up from the end rather than on the centre, halfway line, and the tunnel, and hearing the far end of the stadiums, see people get to the top of the tunnel first, and that
Yeah.
noise, yeah, it was just. It wasn't a great day, but certainly lit a fire in me, being part of that, and just made me. Not for one moment did I ever regret it. Only things that happened just reinforced that I always felt I'd made the right decision for me.
Yeah. I mean, you did get back there. We'll get to that in a bit, but so you come to Saints, you get a couple of seasons on your belt, you start to win a couple of trophies. The first game I can remember is 27th of December 92 against Wigan. You and Sonny got a brace each. Your old mate Lockers was on. That's the first player we interviewed on here, and we had Phil Vivas just before Christmas. What do you remember about that game? Because you really enjoyed yourself that day.
Yeah, well, I've seen YouTube bits of it, and not looking for them, but once I retired, and coaching with the youth, some of the guys that I coached would often say, "Oh, I was trying to find clips probably because they want to see me have a howler rather than have a
Yeah.
good one." But they'd say, "Oh, I saw a clip of this and that," and so you might go and have a look. And obviously, that was a great day. But I didn't realise until I saw it in my memory. I remember the ban, but I only ever had two bans in my life. I got cited, which was this time, and then I got sent off 18 months later. But I'd just come back from a 3-match ban,
Yeah.
and that was my first game back. And I always wanted to go on the left wing. It wasn't a choice thing I think it was from the other player. I think when I first went to St Helens, Les was the established winger, and he was a great winger.
Quirk.
I think really underrated. Scored some phenomenal tries, and important ones as well. And him and Lockers had a partnership, so I slotted in on the right. And from word dot, if me and Les are the wingers and Les is out, I become number one winger because anybody else coming in is behind me.
Yeah.
And I went to the left, not because I preferred, because I'm not one of these that's like I can only play on the left wing and I can only play on the right. And I know, and I've played with plenty that are like that, but it didn't bother me. There were pros and cons for playing on the right, pros and cons for playing on the left. In my game, the biggest pro for playing on the left was playing outside lockers. He was the best centre in the country. I never played with, as a winger, a centre better than him for feeding his winger. And the likes of Gary Connolly and Paul Newlove, who I played with, I mean, we're talking world-class, which Lockers is as well, world-class centres in different ways. But if I'm a winger and I want to score tries, I'm picking Paul Loughlin as my centre.
Oh yeah, he's a
Every day of the
player.
week, twice on a Sunday. He was phenomenal. And so I always went, right, I'm on left wing, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I think Sully didn't like playing on the right. So came in and went straight on the left. I didn't mind, so I stuck with it. So then if it wasn't a case of whether Sully was in front of me or not, that was his preference. I didn't have one for me, because I carry it right-handed or left-handed, or I've got a left footstep or right footstep. And by that time, Sully was probably, I think, his second or third year, and he must have been injured, I'm presuming. Wasn't playing, so I went onto the left wing when I came back outside lockers. And
so Lockers had come back from an injury that game as well, didn't he? That was his first game back, was it?
Who's?
Lockers.
I'm not sure because I had missed the last three. So I'm not sure who played the week before, etc. And funnily enough, I've just taught Lockers up about how magnificent he was at feeding the ball to his winger. And both my tries, neither of them were off Lockers that day. One was a pass off Coops, who was a genius. And the other one...
that partnership with Cooper and Rapati was unreal.
Oh, I mean, Shane Cooper was...
You could put him anywhere on the pitch, you'd have a go, wouldn't he?
He was a few yards short because he wasn't quick. He wasn't super slow. He played the game in slow motion because he just saw things that with pace, people would remember him as world class.
Yeah.
I think of him as world class because I knew exactly what he was. We got the benefits of just how good he was. He saw things and played the game at a pace that it was like he was in slow motion and everybody else was running around like with their heads cut off. He was always calm, always picked out the right pass, delay, early, whatever it may be. He was such a smart rugby player. Add to that, he was tough. I mean, he wasn't the biggest guy, but he played down the middle of the park as a loose forward. He could play on an edge if he was playing in the halfbacks. How he played didn't really change if he had a 13 or a 6 or 7 on his back, ball in hand. Defensively, it made a difference to him. So, but yeah, he just saw things. And I think my first try was off a smart short side. He just showed the ball, Drew Sunday, passed it to me. And then the other one, from a scrum. We formed a scrum and got tackled at the base of it. So we were still at a back line out as though it was a scrum move. Went through what we were doing. Gary, I think, threw a lovely short ball to Dave Lyons. Dave went screaming through and put me on the end of it. So, which was nice. If I didn't have a wonky left foot, I might have got a hat trick because Sonny's second in the second half was a chip over, and I want to sell it. Yeah, I saw the support players and Phil Beavers picked it up and etc. But I was trying to chip it over hand Paul so I could regather it, and it went at 45 degrees instead of straight. But, I don't think it mattered by that time. We'd pretty much won every element of the game. And when you beat your nearest and not so dearest so heavily, it
Yeah.
was
I don't think I could have asked for a better introduction to the game, if I'm going to be honest.
well, it made our Christmas. It was, and to me, that was people. It's opinions. People will discuss slash argue the pros and cons, why I'm wrong or right. For me, that was the best Saints team I played in.
Yeah.
That 92-93 season, and we didn't win a double like we did in 96. And if you could, the difference between the two teams is so close because the
Yeah.
96 team was phenomenal as well. We had some great players. But we played Wigan 6 times that year and beat them 3 times, 1-2, drew the other. The 2 that we lost were just important games, a Challenge Cup game and a Lancashire Cup final. Nobody really hammered anybody that year, barring that game, so it was us that really towelled them. We drew with them in the league away, which is all at Central Park was such a tough place to go. But yeah, Challenge Cup game and a Lancashire Cup game, and Frano Boyka. He was such a lovely guy, but bloody cost me.
Yeah.
He cost me and my teammates a fortune because that season he possibly and probably was the only difference. I mean, when you look at that 8-8, 8-all draw at Central Park, we scored 2, they scored 1. He kicked a penalty from touchline.
He was just an unbelievable kicker, wasn't
They went for 2-point penalties that nobody else probably would. They'd tap it and go and get touch, not because of pressure, but because when you go for a penalty, you've got to make it.
Yeah.
You've got to miss 1 out of 10. Everybody misses more than 1 out of 10 from touchlines. He was kicking them from the touchline because for him, very rarely missed them as well. So yeah, in that 8-hole, his kicking was the difference in that game. 5-4. He kicked 5 points for them. A ridiculous drop goal from a position that nobody takes drop goals from, and penalties in a similar vein.
I think he could kick conversions from outside the stadium, to be honest.
And yeah, he was the difference, I thought, that year. But in actually playing rugby, I thought we were better than Wigan that year, and didn't get what we deserved. Thankfully, we won the Premiership, because we deserved it. I mean, that was a great Saints team, as is the 96 one. But I just that 92. I mean, it's hard not to. I mean, you've heard our talk about Paul Lachlan. Swap him out for Paul Newlove. Completely different players, but New is a phenomenon. He was
it was ridiculous.
So I suppose me and Sully don't matter which team you pick because we're the guys that played in both. And I'm not sure there's anybody else that did play other than me, Sully, and Jointy.
Martin. Tommy Martin.
No. He only signed in 93.
92.
No, he signed in 93. He signed that off season. He signed that off season. I was thinking you was thinking of Martin the Virus when you went surname rather than first name. Tommy and Ian Pickervan signed for the following season, 93, 94. So I think we were the 3. So it doesn't matter to us which team you pick. But I just and Kevin Ward.
Joe, he's just before he just got that knee injury before I started watching. So I miss Kev Ward, but I've only ever heard good things about him.
Best prop I ever played with, But yeah, I mean the difference between the two teams was a discussion. I'm not Right, that's my opinion. Lots of other people would agree. Lots of other people would disagree with that. Yeah,
There's a
but
lot of
yeah.
people who hold Kevin Ward in really high regard.
Oh, I mean, like I say, the I did past my time, but the likes of James Graham, who I think was a phenomenal player and did wonderful things for St Helens, etc. Um, Played against him, but it was after I left. David Fairley, but he was only there that season, I think. But I mean, Wardy had done it all like Cass. Never
Yeah,
mind at St Helens, but I mean, he played in the World Cup finals at 34, 35-year-old, and the Aussies were still terrified of him. He was a player that he'd been out to Australia and he'd won a grand final, part of that 88 team that got the monkey off the back, so to speak, winning a test match in an Ashes series, which we hadn't done for a long time. Having played with him, knowing what effects that he had on the opposition,
yeah,
what he did for us. I mean, he backed it up with his performances. He was just a freak of a player. It's just so tough, so mobile as well. And quite pacey. Um, and I mean, different times, different eras. The speed of the game's different, etc. But back then, you had to play 80 minutes often because you didn't have, four subs. You didn't have 8 rotations. It was, often that those guys were out there slogging it out for the full 80 minutes. Not every, but quite often it was a prop, not a prop, a forward and a back on the bench. You only had two.
yeah,
So if you want to make a substitution, it might be one of your props, that you might give a rest to, or etc. So for such a big man, great engine on him, and one of those players that it was a privilege to play with.
yeah. As you say, you won the Premiership '93. Then there was a couple of years where there was a rebuild of like players coming in, going out, like you say, Goulding, New Love, and all the rest of it. And then '96 comes around, the first Super League season. You win the double, and as you mentioned before, against Wembley, you got the chance to go on and play this time.
Yeah, not that I was on the field that long. I I snapped my cruciate in '91.
Yeah,
We played against Trafford Borough. We beat them 100 points to 4 or something ridiculous, and snapped my cruciate. It's rugby, and I was told investigative keyhole surgery. Right, your ACL's gone. We've trimmed a little bit of cartilage that had probably been displaced in that injury, but may have been there a bit longer. You can have a reconstruction, or you can try rehab and get it back to strength and see how it goes. And John Neal had been out for nearly 18 months when he had his done, and the surgeon gave me the example. ACL is what Gaz has done, because he'd just done his,
yeah,
and he was taking his time. And I went, I'll try the rehab. So I played 4 years without an ACL, but every first 18 months, 2 years, no issues. But then it kept going, and because it's gone, you can't do it again. But because that stability is not there, you keep taking
yeah,
cartilage away. My knee was becoming a bag of bones. So I missed that centenary season, the build up to '96. So I was just glad to be back and playing.
yeah,
And from surgeon's table to pit to play, I had to play an 18 game to come back and see how it was, because you can't risk it in the first team game. And so I played in an 18 game. It was all right, but from surgeon's table to pitch, it was 5.5 months, which 30 years ago, it's still super quick now. You
yeah,
still don't hear him any. And Tommy Martin, I think, was 6 months, so it was only a couple of weeks longer. Me and Tommy went and did a lot of our rehab together. So we missed that centenary season. So I made my first game back was the semi-final against Widnes, and he put me straight in because obviously Joey Hayes and Danny Arnold were still young, still inexperienced. I'm an international got the experience. I'm fit, right? I'm going to go with that. And he's a new coach, Sean McRae, so he went with the experience. And in the semi-final, I bloody rolled my ankle. Nothing bad, nothing bad. But when you've been out, because
Yeah.
obviously I didn't have the operation until the start of the season because I'd played in the pre-season friendly. That was the game that was testing my knee. So I've had it washed out. It's if it starts wobbling again, if it's not right, I'm having the reconstruction because we don't have hindsight. I'd have been far better finishing 94, 95, having it done in the May. And I'd have been back sometime in the senior season on the time scale. You're frozen. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I mean, still, yeah. It just blocked
Yeah.
off a little bit, but it's all right now.
No. So yeah, hindsight's 2020 in it. So I said I'll have it washed out. I'll see how it goes in the pre-season friendly. If it's no good, I'm having the reconstruction. So that's what I did, and wasted 3 months in hindsight. So I come back for the semi-final, roll my ankle. I'm like, I've not played for 10 months. My first game back, I was out for 2 weeks, which were the start of Super League, and Danny Arnold scored 7 tries.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know what happened to him, but he was there, then he wasn't.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he's a good finisher, Danny. And funnily enough, Joey Hayes ended up going on the British Lions tour at the end of the
Yeah.
season, so it was probably by the Great Britain coach ahead of Danny. In that respect, I went on that tour as well, and all three of us could play on the wing. And you'd think right wing for St Helens because Sully was on the left. Obviously, my versatility was to my benefit that season. So yeah, I missed those first two. I played the semi, missed the first 2 league games where we won Workington, which wasn't unexpected. But the win against Wigan was big, and again, looking back, that could have been the title decider there. And I was really close to playing that game, but he's not going to drop Danny after scoring 4. Danny
Yeah.
then scores 3. I came back in and played fullback my first game. Preki must have been, I'm presuming, injured. So I came back and played fullback the next couple of games. And like I said, I suppose my versatility was to my benefit because I think I played on the bench a couple of times that year. One of them being Wembley. I missed 3, so I missed the first 2. So I only missed 1 more game for the rest of the season. Probably played nearly, if not as many games in the centre as Scott Gibbs did that year.
Yeah.
Because he didn't finish the whole season. And I can't remember exactly when he left, but there was probably a time whilst he was still there that either he or Newey didn't play, so I played centre. Preki didn't play, so I played fullback. Played on the left wing, played on the right wing, but played 19 of the 22 games. So, I felt I was still as big a part as most of the lads. I won't say quite as big as maybe Paul Newell.
Yeah. You don't realise how big that fella was, do you?
Yeah, he couldn't stop scoring. But Danny couldn't stop scoring either. I think Danny was like second in the try scoring list. And we just had a dream season, that win against Wigan got us rolling. So we didn't lose a game until the second half of the season. We lost to the next 2 best teams away, Wigan away, Bradford away, and Bradford took everybody by surprise a little bit that season on just how good they were. And yeah, the win at Wembley. Everybody's fit. Everybody wanted to be fit for Wembley. So I was on the bench and came on at loose forward, funnily enough. So which people might not believe it. I think you'd have to watch that. I think there was 1 scrum in the game, and I packed down at loose forward. So yeah. the versatility came in quite handy that year, and obviously the most successful year that I had at Saints when it comes to silverware and what have you. And I mean, it was just a special time to be playing, not just because we won, the excitement of the build up, because we'd gone from winter to rugby, from part time to full time, as clubs. I mean, there was periods where I didn't work whilst I was at Saints when we were playing winter, because you're a regular first teamer, and being able to rest during the day is a lot easier than digging holes, which I'd done as a labourer,
Yeah.
and what have you. And I know there was a period when me and Gary Connolly weren't working, and we used to go up and mess about with the lads, Neil Holding, Paul Lachlan, Shane Cooper, because they all worked at the ground.
Yeah.
But skived whenever they could, and we'd be playing indoor cricket and what have you. And but that wasn't full time. That was just relying on rugby as your only wage. To be in that environment where you were going in during the day, training had changed as well. I wasn't lazy, but I had a tendency to maybe not push myself as hard as I possibly could.
Yeah.
At every training session, the fitness, because naturally we're young and one of the fittest anyway, etc. So I had a bit of a Caribbean outlook on that, quite laid back. But
Yeah.
the reconstruction completely changed that, and I'd never worked so hard in my life, because my career was at stake. So once I was back playing, that then transpired back into your training, etc. And just having more time on the field when it was ball in hand, always on it, always focused. Obviously, you learn from the people that you play with, and I've learned from some really good players at Saints, but also being part of that Great Britain setup and being on tour in '92, etc. So you're around your Sean Edwards and your Ellie Hanleys, etc. And that full-time environment, because that is a full-time
Yeah.
environment when you're on tour, and knowing what you've got to do there. So when it came to ball, and Mal really as a coach was too scared to get it wrong. You've got to be really
Yeah.
focused and switched on. So that switch to that full-time environment at club level was exciting, and great. And it was a really warm summer as well, so that everybody's mood was better. I loved it, because a fast, hard track is exactly what players like.
Yeah.
Myself and Sully, etc., thrived on. So then to do the double was just the dream ending to that '96 season.
Oh. So I've got a couple of I put the word out about it, and I've had a couple of questions from followers on Instagram and all that. Josh Douglas wanted to know how you got into rugby, but we already answered that early on with your dad and all that. Ben, who normally does the podcast with me, he couldn't make it tonight, but he's got a question for you. Who's the most underrated player or unsung hero from your time at Saints?
Bernard Dwyer.
Bernard Dwyer. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was just a machine. Again, versatile. Thought signed as a back rower / loose forward. Ended up getting in on the earning his one and only Great Britain cap when he was at Bradford as a back rower, but had a wonderful period where he was 18th man in the World Cup final in '92,
Yeah.
because there was 4 of us in that squad: Kevin Ward, Gary Conley, myself, and Bernard. And with the hookers that were about, Martin Dermott, Lee Jackson, and Bernard, and I'd say that as a hooker, as an experiment of bringing Paul Groves off the bench as an impact back when you only had 2 subs, like everybody does nowadays, nearly.
Yeah.
It was a bit out of left field at the time from Mike McLennan, but that was Mike McLennan. and you had Bernard who could just work really, really hard, and with Kevin Ward and whoever it would be the other proper. We had some good ones that Paul Forbes, etc., George Mann, John Harrison's. But Bernard sometimes would go off for a bit of a rest. Sometimes he'd move into the back row, and the back row could go off because of his versatility. But he got in on his form to the World Cup squad as a hooker. And people didn't rave about him, but he got recognised. I remember he pulled his hamstring in training when he first got selected for Great Britain and couldn't play, which was just before the World Cup. Roundabouts when I was making my debut, and Gary was in the season that he made his debut for Great Britain. But just a workaholic on the field, and rugby is the toughest sport in the world. And it's like a war sometimes, especially back then. People could be taking your heads off, etc., as well as just the brutality of it. I can't think of anybody I would want to go war more with than Bernard. Just St Helens lad as well, that, gutted when he left. He was gutted. I was pleased for him as an individual, that he got some of the recognition with the silverware when he went to Bradford. And people actually, became less underrated there than he was at St Helens. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he was as appreciated. As nobody thought, well, how does he get a game? Everybody knew he was a good player.
Yeah.
But just how good, Bernard was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like one of those players you realise how good they were when they've packed it in. When you actually go back and look back at it.
Yeah, or when they're playing against you, which he certainly did when he was at Bradford. But really, and just a great bloke as well, So he'd have to be somewhere in a team I was picking. I just loved playing with Bernard.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned like playing against him there, but the next question from Josh Lynch is, which player did you find the hardest to play against?
It's a tough one, that. So everybody's tough.
Yeah.
If you're not on it, you can have a bad day at the office. Somebody can be having a really good day at the office. I've had some great tussles with the likes of, obviously, probably my most notorious one is Martin, left wing, right wing, and what have you. And I always raised my game because he was the best, Martin. His record's phenomenal. Paul Newlove, I played against him in the centre a couple of times. A couple of times I got one over him. A couple of times he got over me. It was always tough, but I didn't fear anybody. I feared me not playing well. If I played well, I was happy that it was going to be a really good contest. Or or not an easy day at the park, but if I'm on the game, I felt like I was better than my opposition more often than they were better than me, so to speak. But you've got to be on your game, so you've got to give it all your opponents respect in that, and go out there knowing it's between you and me, and I don't want it to be me that has the bad game, and I've had shockers up against someone that people forget about, years later, and you have really good games against players that were internationals, etc. So at club level, I didn't have it. The one time I did was I was marking Mal Meninga in '94.
That's a player you don't want to go up against.
I was nervous. I was nervous then, because I didn't have to play for St Helens to know what he was like.
Yeah.
But having played for St Helens, and people talk about how phenomenal he was in '85. And I remember I was in at that time probably the form of my life going into the game, playing on the wing, top of the try scoring list, and it's relatively early in the season, but there's enough games. And I was part of that '94 squad, and Elliot was captain, coach, should I say? And I remember him picking the team the first time he announced it. We're in the changing room. We're at Central Park. We're in the changing rooms. And I'm thinking it's between me and Jason Robinson for the right wing. When you looked at the squad,
Yeah.
And because Jason, myself, and Martin were in the same squad. And
That's a
nobody,
scary thought, that is it, when you got that many
well,
wings
yeah,
disposal.
and nobody's taking the number 5 shirt, Martin. I've always,
Yeah.
Despite what people may think I think of him, he was phenomenal, and some of my actions were because he was the best, and you do what it takes. But so I'm hanging on number 2,
Yeah.
XYZ, you know what I mean? Whoever it may
Yeah.
be. And Ellery, his name, the team's got number 1, Jonathan Davis. Number 2, Jason Robinson. And my heart sunk.
Yeah.
Not because I thought Jason wasn't as good as me, but because I always regard it as the highest honour playing for your country. And I wanted to play for my country whenever possible. And Jason was a phenomenal player. And he played the year before when it looked like I was going to be playing, and then I got injured the week before the game, and Jason stepped in because Jason wasn't quite the name that he was
Yeah, he
building
was
up to
still really
that.
young then, wasn't
Yeah, when he made his debut against New Zealand. And I mean, what a player he became as well.
he? Yeah.
And so he said, number 2, Jason Robinson. And my heart sunk. My head went down. And not in a sulky way. I was disappointed,
Yeah.
and you should be. You should want to play for your country. Number 3, Gary Conley. But I didn't hear that. Number 4, Alan Hunt. And I didn't hear that. And
It's too busy in your own head.
I'm sat next to Gaz, because me and Gaz were like from our time at St Helens like that.
Yeah.
And he starts shaking me, going, "Well done, mate, well done." And I'm going, "What? It's not, I'm not picked." He went, "I didn't censor." I went, "You're joking, mate." And honestly, I didn't hear my name.
Yeah.
And he pulled me in jointy because he was playing jointy at prop. And he played me in the centre. He knew I could play centre. And he said, "I've every faith in you. I know you can play there. You're in the form of your life. I want to pick the best players. So you're in." And he went, and obviously with Marky Mullen's, my heart sank again.
Yeah.
I was
I can
like,
imagine.
damn. Oh, and I'd obviously, I played against Australia once in the World Cup final, but I was on the wing. But I played against Mal a couple of times, one for St Helens, and obviously in that World Cup final, which wasn't. I didn't have a bad day barring one thing, but it was quite important. The thing that I
Yeah.
lost the ball, and it was a tough time in my head. Probably where I found out how resilient I was, because not from Saints fans, but from the opposition for a period of time. I was one of those enemies that lost us the World Cup, which is true. But, over 80 minutes, there was more than a couple of mistakes, me and Johnny Devereux. But that was the moment, you know what I mean? And it was, tough. So back on that international scene, I played against them, and I was desperate to put that right, and thinking I'm not playing, and suddenly I am, but I'm playing in the centre. And obviously, he just won the Golden Boot, just won
Yeah.
the grand final with Canberra. He's in the twilight of his career, couldn't tell. It
Yeah.
was as destructive as he'd ever been. And I'm like, wow, this is a task, isn't it? So yeah, I'd say Mal is the one that I feared for that short period, like I'd not done any other player. But thankfully, in that first test, obviously we got up against him, didn't we? So, and Sean Edwards got sent off just to make it a little bit tougher. So,
Oh yeah, remember that
you
one?
know, and I wouldn't even say it was my best performance, where you're scoring 80-meter tries and or making try-saving tackles here, there, and everywhere, or whatever it may be. I just thought everybody on that day were phenomenal,
Yeah.
and it's my proudest rugby moment. So, from my scariest opponent comes my proudest rugby moment, being part of that 17 on that day at Wembley, because we still talk about it. Well, other people, and what have you. And we've just had an Ashes series, and the first highlight is Jonathan's try in the corner.
Yeah.
It's quite an iconic moment in our international history, So yeah, Mal.
Yeah. I was actually at the second test at Old Trafford that year, and the just put a number on us, isn't there?
Yeah, and again, I hadn't done anything wrong. He made a change because Paul knew he wasn't. I don't. I might not have played as well. You don't know, but knew he wasn't fit. And it's weird because the centres in that, there was 4 guys played centre in that series that I can remember. And it'd be a good quiz question because nobody's ever picking me. But who's the only one that started all 3 test matches in the centre? And it's me, because Gary played fullback in the last test.
Yeah.
Me and Gary started the first test at centre and the second test. Alan Bateman came off the bench and played centre in that first test when Jonathan Davis went off because Gary went to fullback. So
Yeah.
there's 3 of us, and then New Love was on the bench and replaced Alan Bateman in the second test, and he came on for me. And Mal, he scored an interception, but it's in the times when centres doubled up, and
Yeah.
it wasn't down my side of the field. But he just wanted to change it up as well, and he brought me off and put Newey on. But Sportson said, I was changing up. I still started in the third test, but I came off injured in that game. But yeah, most people wouldn't pick me for the only guy to start in all 3 games because they automatically think of me as a winger as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look at the company you're in. If you want to be a winger, Sully wasn't getting a look in, and Sully's and Robinsons and Martin Fires, etc. And I thankfully was part of that mix. But I also want to be in the mix at centre, and you got Paul Newlove and Gary Connolly and Paul Locklin and Alan
Yeah.
Bateman, and the fullbacks. Gary could play there, Jonathan Davis. I mean, Graham Steadman, Joe Lydons. Well, it was. Yeah, hence, who's your toughest opponent? You just had to be on it every week.
Yeah.
Because when you're playing the better clubs, who all these players played for, didn't matter who you were playing, you were up against some real quality. I mean, world-class players that there's not one of them that I haven't mentioned that didn't do it on the international stage.
Yeah.
At some stage of their career. So yeah, it was a, looking back, a testing time because there was so much talent in the 3 quarters
Yeah.
around in the country at the time.
No, I don't think anyone can argue with picking Big Mal. We spoke briefly at the Steve Prescott Charity Balls event last year, about 10 minutes with yourself and Steve Hampson, and I've been dying to get you on since then because it was a good conversation. So really appreciate you giving me your time, Al. I've really enjoyed it.
Been an absolute pleasure. Talking rugby is never a chore, and obviously talking about some of the memories is always nice. And obviously, St Helens is a massive part of my life. Spent a long time in the town, after I'd left St Helens as well, and I'm still doing it now. Don't live in the town, but coming and watching the games. I've got the privilege this year of being able to do the radio, so I get to see all the Saints games. It's a tough watch last week.
Oh,
But
yeah, that didn't happen.
That's rugby. To be fair, I mean, they're going through the ringer at the moment with the injuries, etc. You know, and as big clubs are, they'll always have more prosperous times than others,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's a little bit leaner. Try being a Wakefield fan,
So it's not
which
looking too bad at Wakefield at the minute, though.
you know, people are surprised. I am a Wakefield fan. I'm a Wakey lad, and I'm a big believer. Support where you're from, you know,
Yeah,
and so once as a professional, you go to a club. My heart was 100% with the clubs I played for. Again, I'm, you know, you make a decision for whatever reason, you go, and that's what you're doing now. So you give what you've got. And I always wanted to probably beat Wakefield more than anything because I couldn't go home otherwise. All my mates take the mickey out because they take the mickey out of me.
yeah,
But once you hang the boots up, I always look for the Saints results or Warrington or whatever it may be. I played the longest at Saints, so it's a massive part of my rugby career and a huge chunk of my heart. But as a supporter, I'm a Wakefield lad. And so the lean times at Saints is been good years for Wakefield.
yeah,
We've not won silver. And you talked about when I started playing, it coincided with Wakefield getting to Wembley in '79. And we hadn't been to a finals. They have. They won the Yorkshire Cup, but that's when I was playing. So I couldn't support them for that. I was pleased because we're not in that competition that they'd won it. But yeah, as a Wakey supporter, it's been a very, very long time. So
yeah. Well, it looks like
Saints,
it's starting to look up at the minute, so it's definitely
yeah,
starting to gel again now.
you know, and it will at Saints. They'll get some. They'll get some of those bodies back, and I, I think the two clubs at the top are a bit in front of everybody else. But on their day, I mean, that game at Leeds last year was phenomenal. It was. I
Wow.
was at that game, and you
Yeah, I
know,
was.
they're the rugby moments out there that you
Yeah,
know, and sat in the press box calling the game, surrounded by Leeds fans. It was. You know, it was a brilliant moment because they all associate me with St Helens, and I wanted
yeah,
St Helens to win that game because obviously they're my team, unless they're playing against Wakefield in that respect. Um, and so I just made up because it hadn't been the greatest season. But yeah, the a great club, and I'm really proud to have been part of the history.
yeah. We all appreciate what you did for us in your time there. So though I've taken quite a lot of your time. I'll let you get on. But yeah, really appreciate you coming on, Alan. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much. Cheers. Cheers.
I appreciate it. And everyone listening, thanks very much. And wish Alan all the best in the future.